Before we even talk about, partner-driven initiatives, can you define that from your perspective, like what that looks like, just so I know we're talking about the same thing?
Yeah. It's funny. Partnerships it has become like the nebula. It's kind of like what business development used to be. Right now, it's partnerships. It's like, what does that mean? How do you define it? Growth is very much in that vein, right? Of like, what does growth mean? Like,
Yeah.
everyone's responsible for growth, right? But partnerships, the way we define it, right, is basically the relationships that we have with the curators, the influencers, and the experts that help drive uh, you know, growth for Momentous. And in our world, that has many different flavors. So you have experts like Andrew Huberman, Stacey
Mhm.
Sims, Kelly Starrett. You have influencers, which is very known to the world, I think, at this stage. We have brand partners that we work with. That there's a lot of that brand alignment. What can we do? How do we show up? Our most formalized and prominent one would be our relationship with CrossFit. Um, and then there's everything in between. You have each of those can be a mix of one or more, and they have different staging with it, right? So you have some leading experts who have a really strong public base, as like the ones we mentioned before. Then you have some really important experts and academics behind the scenes that actually drive the in our industry for health and wellness, drive the future of health and wellness through their research and the work that they do every day. Um, Interestingly, within the world of growth and partnerships as well, we have a team that's focused on strategic sales. And so we are predominantly a D2C organization, but we
Mhm.
have a direct sales channel that is focused on selling into the pro and college landscape. So most folks don't know that we're in nearly 200 pro and college locker rooms and also sell to the US government. And those we actually consider partnerships, even though they are sales, because they are so influential in the work that we do. So I guess crystallizing that as we think about partnerships, it's the relationships that ultimately move the needle on our mission of democratizing high performance.
And I appreciate you kind of categorizing it like that. I work in buckets or categorization, so that helps me envision it that way. And one other question before we really dive into it and just talk about the process you do with it and all of that. But could you tell us a little bit about just how important that's been for the brand partnerships?
Yes, very important. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, the most important. So listen, we're a supplement company, and I would imagine for most of your listeners, Colby, people are looking for silver bullets or playbook
Mm,
that they can just quickly adopt. Um, and maybe that's a generalization. I feel like sometimes I'll listen to a podcast like, oh, what can I take from this? How do I apply it in my own life?
yeah.
I think what I love most about partnerships and why I've been doing it for so long is that it is a very personal value creating endeavors. How do you create these win-win-win opportunities? And very tough to replicate, right? It's kind of like the
Mhm.
relationships in your own life. It's like, how do I find a partner? How do I find friends? It's like it's deeply personal. There's some tactics that we can bring that are transferable for our business, right? We're a supplement company. I'm sure that brings up a lot of weird connotations for people. I
Mhm.
grew up in the era of Vitamin Shop and GNC, and people telling me to get big tubs of whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so, really, really important that as a company that's leading the industry in terms of quality and brand and how we bring those two things together, that we needed to find leading experts that were going to, yeah, demonstrate our expertise and our dominance in the field. And so, hats off to the team. I mean, I feel like I get to stand on the shoulders of giants. Our CEO, Jeff Byers, our COO, Erica Good. Uh, they've been, crafting these partnerships for years in terms of becoming an integrated uh, entity within the world of human performance. And so as you take a step back, you say, okay, let's find the super high quality products. Great. Who are the partners that are going to demonstrate this world of high performance? It's going to be leading experts in the space. It's going to be the people who actually use this the most and people who trust that. And then last but not least, just the US government, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
if the government uses it, there's value to it. They're not messing around, right? And so for us, when we think about as a brand, how we structure our partnerships and who we want to work with, it's who's going to be emblematic and reflective of the utility, the efficacy, and the inspiration that people want. I mean, people are going to listen to the changing health establishment of folks like Andrew Huberman. They're going to want to know that their favorite sports team, that this is in their locker room. They're going to want to know that the people that are on the front lines use this every day. And so those are the ways that we think about how do we want to categorize our partnerships and really make sure that we're on the front lines, working with the best in the space.
And I think I heard you say this, but I imagine as you're looking at the different types of partnerships you have, they all have different lead time's not the right word, cycle's not the right word, but getting Andrew Huberman on board versus getting a influencer with 200,000 followers on TikTok is going to be a different ball game, right? Like it's going to be different strategies going with it.
Of course. And, I think this is where I just love talking strategy, because I think that what I love most is working one-on-one with partners and I shouldn't even say partners, teams around some of these partners, right? There's ecosystems built around these folks who have become celebrity in a lot of ways. There's only so many people in the space that are like that. And so that's a really, we talk about building credibility and our work in the pro and college landscape. A lot of that gives us access to those individuals because they're sitting there going, why would I ever work with you? Like, why should I work with you? And so those are very bespoke, white glove, very tailored, and you really have to bring something unique to the space, right? You need to align to their why. And as you go down the tiering, right? So you have the goats in the game, right? Like the best of all time at the top. As you move down to the everyday influencer, who's very important to the company and very important to our partnership landscape, the incentives change. A lot of those influencers are looking for brands that they can make money with and that align to who they are. And that's beautiful, right? It can be more of a paycheck sometimes. We care about finding the folks that, the economics have to make sense, but they really want to represent and endorse the brand. They really care about democratizing high performance. But it's really just, I would say, not only a matter of incentives, but the lead times, of course, are very different. The execution, the tactics are very different across the board. From the mega stars all the way down to the individual influencers.
Yeah, and you said the execution, and that's one question that I actually had at the top of my list coming into this. And I know, like you've said, for people listening at home, it may be different. It may not be copy paste versus the way that you've done things, right? But with the what I'll call social media influencers, to me, execution makes sense. They make the content, they put it on their channel. You have ideally some sort of tracking. It goes out, purchases happen, right? But as you're looking at people that have more of a multi-channel following or just like their own network, how have you gone about planning execution and like, we're going to use this in paid social content versus our own organic versus his? What does that kind of look like?
What I would first start with is, I like to think about like if you're starting from square one, I think it's really easy. It's a little bit of a misnomer to immediately jump to scale because a lot of people aren't there yet. Maybe you're at the space where you're acquiring your first partner or your first 10 partners, your first 100. You really want to think about like, what's that value proposition for the brand, for the company? Like, how are we utilizing partners? What's the clear agreement that we're going to have with our partners? What's the value we're creating for them and the value that they're creating for us? And just start testing that out, like for your first 10 partners and just see what works. And over time, you're going to see what that experience is like, not only for your partner, but then also how that translates to your customer. And so at Momentous, we have partnerships and marketing as two distinct functions just because they are both so critical and so important to our success as a company. And so, to your point around how do we actually execute around that, a lot of it right now is for us to, one, identify the partners that are going to be the most valuable to our initiatives at Momentous. The second is going to be identifying the levers that are going to be most valuable and aligned to the partner and that we know we can execute on really, really well. So whether that's, this is where it gets like super tactical, everything from your social collaboration to your content creation to your, the the book giveaway, whatever it is, like all of it's on the table. And I think what's most important for us is we're growing really, really fast, having a really clear line of sight into the inventory of things that we can do. And then once you have the what identified, the how is a completely separate question. I think
Mm,
that distinction is really important. First, identify what you want to do, and then identify how you want to do it. And that's where we get really creative with marketing. It's exploring the content integration. It's exploring this alignment with the marketing initiatives and the different rollouts that we have, whether it's a product launch or we have these initiatives, like are they focused on the future of female performance? Or, we're going to be rolling out with a new SKU. There's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And so, that's from the marketing angle. And from our side, we're saying like, hey, like give you an example. One of our partners is Michael Easter. He just came out with his new book, Scarcity Brain. He's an amazing human. We're so grateful that we get to partner with him. Michael coming in saying, hey, I got a new book launch. Yes. As a partner, we would be so remiss. It would have missed opportunity if we weren't going to celebrate and find a way to champion that for him. It's so important for him, right? And so that's where it becomes that two-way street. But I think what's most important is getting very clear on the tactics that you have available, and then going back to the drawing board to say, how do we maximize that? If you try to do them together, it gets really messy. You have a lot of frustrated meetings. You have a lot of chicken or the egg conversations.
yeah.
And I think most importantly, like from the experience working in that environment, it's really frustrating when everything if you don't have that clarity, those types of activations can feel like distractions, and they're really, really important. And so it's essential to create the systems and the processes and have the team built around the ability to quickly execute those types of activations. And that's something that we work through every day at Momentous, right? We're still figuring that out and what that means. There's a lot of really great players in the space that do that really well. And we're figuring out what that means for us right now.
Yeah, and one thing that I've heard startups talk about, or marketers talking to startups about processes for influencer outreach, and we're talking specifically about TikTok influencer, Instagram influencer pathway there, is it sounds like a volume game that I generally hear, which is, DM X 50 people per day, try to get as many as you can, start sending out free product, hope that they will, post it that way. What's your stance on quality versus volume? And let me frame it as in for a startup versus where you all are now. Cause I heard you say we focus on quality.
Yeah. It's a great question, Colby. My bias is always going to be towards quality.
Okay.
I'm sure we all had that experience in life when you had a high quantity of friends and low quality, and how different it is when you have high quality friends and relationships in your life. It's very similar in the partner ecosystem. What I will say, so early on, like you're establishing like product market fit, you're figuring out your brand identity, you're figuring out who am I in this business, in this space. Having high quality partners, and it takes a while to get there, but having high quality partners is evidence of credibility, it builds trust. And I think it's a good indication that you're on the right path. We were very fortunate because of our prowess in the space of, pro in college, and everyone's going to be able to find that avenue of like what that in is. But how are you demonstrating so much quality and so much value that there is that natural alignment? It doesn't have to be A+ list. It can be a B or C player, but someone who's willing to say like, yeah, I use this all the time and it adds so much value to my life. Really important to have those voices early on. And sometimes those are customers, by the way, but partners really help amplify that in a big way. Over time, like I think that it's really easy to write off and to assume that you just don't, I don't want that. I don't want the high volume influencers. I think they're great. I think it's so important to the brand. I think what people miss is having a really important qualifier for who becomes an ambassador to the brand. You need that volume to have effective saturation. I think what people fail on is it doesn't pass the can I swear on this podcast? I don't even know. But it doesn't pass the bullshit test. Like customers are smart, like smarter than we give them credit for. Like you pull up your feed, you're like, I know this is an ad. And so it's really important.
Same person with 10 different products is saying this is my favorite thing ever. And
exactly right. And so I think quantity without quality is a recipe for failure. quality with quantity becomes a really interesting combination.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have, I think about Athletic Greens, they do this really, really well. They are also everywhere, right? But they do it
Mm-hmm.
really well. There are other elements, another great example. And they, both of us have cut their teeth in the audio and sponsored content space. As we think about Momentous, it's going to be a combination of a variety of tactics. I think if you were to see Momentous all over TikTok with like every individual influencer, there would be a piece where you'd go, that doesn't make sense. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
a little too fast, too quick. There's a strategy of how you roll that out. Who are those first 100, 200, 1,000 influencers and partners? What's that partnership experience? Are you giving them the right coaching, the right guidance? Here are the brand guidelines, and having those right checks to make sure that they feel supported and it's also reflective of the brand. But otherwise, it just becomes like you're paying for every billboard on the side of the road, and that becomes a little disingenuous to the brand.
Yeah, and this question I have next is kind of a two-part question, and I don't know how to frame it, so I'm just going to tell you that ahead of time to kind of stumble through it. But you don't have to give specifics of anybody you worked with it, and it could even be not your brand, just something you saw, because I'm sure you stay very in tune to just partnership marketing, right? The things that happen. But have you seen or experienced any partnerships that just didn't fail? And the second part to that, or didn't work and failed. And the second part of that question is, for early startups, I'm sure either getting revenue or not getting revenue is an indicator of failing. But as you get larger, there can be things like brand reputation stuff that play into it, right? So I package all that and now send it to you. Go ahead.
I mean, here's so I'll tell you how about this. I'll share when I've seen partnerships fail.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of give a good guidepost as to like how we've worked around that at Momentous and how I've been able to see this work elsewhere. Right.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you need to get aligned internally on the partnerships function. What's its value? What's its importance? How does it work? Right. So meaning like what is our mission statement as a partnerships team? Like what's our true north as a function? And for some organizations, that's going to be new customer revenue. For some organizations, it's going to be brand awareness and brand development. It's just getting clear on what that is. Doesn't mean you have to get so specific. It's just saying, hey, we're all aligned. This is the value that we're creating. Once you have that, you're able to identify what type of partner you want to find, meaning who do I want to work with that's most reflective of our brand? And now what do I want to bring into the fold, right? Like what do I want to bring into that contract or that negotiation or the true tactics of our partnership to make sure that there's that alignment? Where I've seen partnerships fail is when there's a misalignment between not what the partner wants to do. It's not about a contract execution thing. Like, yeah, that happens. It's like a legal thing. Yeah, it happens, right? Like there's a breach of contract, whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. When partnerships fail, it's because there's a lack of continuity and a lack of alignment between what the partner wants to achieve in their everyday life and their career and what the brand wants to do. And early on, there's an alignment. Let's say you're a wellness brand, right? Like everyone's a wellness brand. Everyone's a tech company or a wellness brand. So, if you're a wellness brand, you're going to find someone who cares about wellness. That's fantastic, right? Someone who aligns to the brand, loves the product, awesome. If where you are taking the company and the direction you are taking the company and what you want that partner to do isn't aligned with their overall capital T true, capital W Y in their life, you're going to find this constant veering off, and you're going to find yourself texting them on a Tuesday being like, hey, can you post on social media? And no one wants that. Like no one wants, you're suddenly micromanaging partners. It becomes this ask situation where it feels very tactical and it lacks, the broader, more structural alignment of what's important to them. So that's just where I've seen, I would say like more thematically, and I'm probably a little more like romantic about how I look at partnerships in the sense of I really look at them as relationships. And so it sounds buzzwordy, but it is very true. And so where I've seen it fail is that there is a lack of alignment between partner and brand. what we've done to get around that is, we have what's called our ideal partner profile. And for your influencer program, this might be just your qualifying criteria. You don't need to, do this whole audit every single time, but like, for your general influencers, here's the criteria that it has to be met. Fantastic. And make sure your partner experience ties into that. As you get bigger and bigger stars, maybe your early stage startup, and you want to find that first big critical partner, what I like to do is I go down this checklist. And the first is there a partner customer fit? So somehow there's product market fit and founder product fit. Like there's all those, different fits. I like to think about the fits that exist for a partner with the company. So there's partner customer fit. Does this partner reflect our customer? Right? Is our customer going to see themselves with our partner? Are they going to look at this partner and say like, oh, this is amazing? What's your current customer base and where you want to grow into? Right. The next is partner company fit. This is aligning to your core values, aligning to your growth initiatives and where you're trying to take the company. Next is partner, kind of tease it out a bit, but partner growth fit. So here's our targets for the company. This is what we want to go do. Is this partner going to help us get there? And last but not least, this one's often overlooked, is partner timing fit. So is it the right time? This one takes a lot of confidence to say no to. So I had a lot of having a partner conversation today where I'm like, I love you. I love what we're doing. It's just, we can't nail this well if we launch right now. So we're going to have to push to Q1. And that's where it's really exciting, where you're actually able to say no. Like it's a good litmus test. Am I able to say no to a partner right now? Oftentimes partnerships teams, marketing teams are really scared to say no. There's a lot of, important pressures. And so this gives a really good litmus test of, does the timing make sense for us right now as a company?
I love how you organize that. Once again, I'm a bracket, I'm a bucket type person, so I appreciate that. One thought that popped up as you were going through that, and once again, I know marketing tactics can't always be copy paste, and there could be other supplement or wellness companies listening, and they could have different org charts as well, right? I see that with agencies pretty often. We can have the same service and have completely different org charts. But with that, is there any specific roles that you find important or really valuable when looking at building out a team for partnerships?
My goodness. It's a great question. Yes. And to your point, company specific. I will say, it's company specific, like in terms of product, in terms of service. It's also stage specific. Like I'm sure there's some, $5 million company right now that's like, yeah, I would love to be able to have all those people, right? Like, how about I get just one person? And so, what I would say in terms of the people that are let's just talk a little high level here, and then we get super tactical. High level, if you're early stage, right? Let's say like sub 25 people, right? 20 people. I don't even want to use people. We can even use revenue, but like, you know that where you're at as a company. Like if this is very early stage for you, and maybe you're a VP or you're a director, maybe you're C-suite, right? You just don't have that person yet. Hopefully you have core values. Make sure that you're hiring against those. Absolutely essential. That first player coach to me is really important. So I like to find that person that I can build around. The person that I know is going to get excited about growing into the role, and also knows that like, hey, the role right now is not something that you love. The role that you're going to get to build over the next 6 to 9 months, it's going to be your dream role. And I think finding that is really important, because you need those people that are willing to roll up their sleeves early days, because you're not mature there, you're not ready, but you're building to an environment where they're going to help elevate, and then you get to build underneath them. That's personally, because then I'm able to find and groom my right hand. That's how I think about that. And hopefully the person that takes my job, right? Like that's, you work yourself with obsolescence. And so that's like a total A player that I need to find for that. So in terms of then the tactics, like right now at Momentous, we're organized based upon the type of partnership, because they all have various different needs. And so, you saw we're hiring for head of influencer. We're bringing on talent for audio and sponsored content, because that has its own focus and its own treatment. We have partnerships manager that's focused just on managing CrossFit because it is such a multifaceted omni-channel beast. And so for us, it's very much like we're laying this foundation of leadership within each critical type of partnership. I'm sure as we mature, you'll see various different, channel owners, and that's usually the role. But I would say like the most important person for me, that first hire is that right hand who is a strategic thinker, player coach, able to get in the weeds on the day to day, but still get to 3 months out.
Perfect. No, I love that. And this might be a weighted question, but can every type of brand have a partnership program? Like, let's say there's a custom hat company, or it's like custom ink or something. But can any brand have partnership?
I mean, yes. And by the way, something's bubbling up about your last question that I'll kind of just blur it out in a sec. But
Okay.
I think so. Like I actually think most people consider their vendors partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that exists today. I've held many different roles in my career, and I remember when I was overseeing a partnerships team, merchandise function, and operations function. I looked at our 3PLs. I was like, y'all are as much of a partner as any of the brands that we work with. I think that what you're hinting at though is there a world where every company would align with being on a whether celebrity or influencer or expert in the space? And I think it's all dependent. I think you could make a case for every company to find interesting ways to bring on partners. I would make a hard distinction though, that like folks that just do one-time social collaborations aren't partners. I think they're fun activations.
Yeah.
Like I could see Custom Ink doing some super dope thing with like a fashion designer, and awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Is that person guiding product? Is that person helping inform you on the business? Are they like a long-term partner? To me, if it's just like, hey, we got together for, a couple months, that was great. To
It's
me,
like a
that's like,
contractor. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It was a really great engagement and really fun, but I don't look at it as a partnership. So I would say there is always a case to find partners, but I think we kind of check in on whole body yes. If it's not a yes, it's a no. And so for right now, if you're like, oh, should I get a partner? If there's like a little bit of doubt, odds are it's like not there yet, but like plant that seed. And I think just looking through the lens of partnerships is a healthy way to think about things. Jumping back to your org chart question, because there is a unifying theme that I've seen in terms of how I operate, because I like to reduce as much drag as possible. And also when you're bringing on high performers in the partnership space, people want to be able to go. They want to like know their role. Let me go execute. Let me do a great job. Last thing they want to do is check in all the time on budget, on is this person the right fit? What do you think? What can we do? It's just a lot of noise. Right? And so what I think about is as vertically integrated as you can make a partnership function, the better. It's kind of like a sales team having, territories. It becomes really, really clean. So I remember, back in the day when I led partnerships at Snack Nation, which ultimately became a company called Karoo. We basically were crafting partnerships with hundreds of CPG brands. We must have had at least 100 partnerships in a given month. So most people can't name more than 5 bar brands, let alone think about 100, So we were all vertically integrated. Each of my partnership managers had a category. And so what's nice about that is they became one, they knew everyone in the industry. 2, they had such functional expertise. Like the demands for a chip brand are different than trail mix. And that sounds, funny to say, but when you're building a $40 million business around that, it's real, right? It's a very important piece of the puzzle. And so similarly, what we're doing with Momentous, the channel becomes the vertical integration, allows us to segment things a little bit better, and also just create a lot of clarity in the value we're able to add back to partners.
I love that. And if you don't have one to share, no stress. But I liked when you were talking about finding a player coach early on in the role that they're growing into a new role, and just kind of your mindset behind that leadership with that person. Any books or anything you'd recommend for coaching or for leadership that you've really pulled a lot from?
Oh, call me. We could do a whole podcast on this, my friend. So the first is I love coaching It's a huge passion and hobby of mine.
Mhm.
Um, I, my favorite book is The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. The
Mhm.
Conscious Leadership Group. They are fantastic. That book, like kind of like a old school '90s book title, but like one of the most. It's not for the faint of heart. It's extraordinary. We actually integrate. I've been a part of 3 organizations that have had this as part of the culture. I highly recommend that. Um, there's so many. I mean, and not to get like too philosophical, it's like you could read all the greats, but I think that one's probably the most tactical, like in terms of bringing that into a culture. Um, and yeah, I would just say like, when you're interviewing this person, the people like to say like, slow to hire, fast to fire.
Mhm.
And I think that can get misconstrued a little bit, like meaning the way I receive that guidance is it's best for the individual and the company if it's not working to find ways to exit that. You do not want to wait. I've made that mistake in the past. It's not
Mhm.
good for anyone involved. And if they're if people are skeptical about that, like it really is a really insightful process to explore what it's like for the person who's sitting there who is miserable in their job. And it's on us as leaders to make sure that, we identify when that is the case and see if we can remedy it. But if ultimately in some situations it is, find a way to exit, right? Slow to hire means like really be thoughtful about this person. Like,
Mhm.
oftentimes people want to get married on the first date. It's like, hey, you really need to get to know this person. And so people spend a lot of time asking tactical questions. Oftentimes, by the time I've received a candidate, I don't need to ask if they know how to do the job.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like their pedigree, their background, it's usually a good indication that they do it. I'm more interested in things like, what have you changed your mind about recently? Like, tell me how you
Mhm.
deal with like conflict. Like, how are we going to work together? And so it's not just 1 30-minute conversation. It's not just 1 hour conversation. It's a lot of conversations. We're exploring how they think about strategy, how they think about engaging with the team, how to handle conflict, how to handle challenge. Um, we also use a system called Cloverleaf at Momentous. If anyone's read Ray Dalio's book, Principles, which is another great one, I guess,
Mhm.
um, they talk about player cards, getting to know everyone in the company. Everyone in the organization actually takes a whole host of personality tests. And every day I'm able to see how I pair up with the people that I'm meeting with. I'm able to, in my one-on-ones, check my blind spots in terms of how our personalities align. It's a great way to work on your relationships versus just in them. I find that to be a really, really useful tool to help people reframe how they work together.
For anybody listening that plans on applying for the influencer job, you now have a little insight, little cheat sheet to the interview process.
Exactly right.
You're welcome for that one. Awesome. Well, we've gone over quite a bit of good stuff here on partnerships. If you had to summarize everything that you've shared today into a marketing mindset, shameless plug for the name of the show, what mindset should marketers or brand owners have when it comes to looking at strategic partnership activation?
Man, distilling it down to one sentence. I should have been prepared for this call. I know this is a
It can
question.
be more than one sentence. It could be 3 words, it could be 3 sentences, but no more.
Yeah, I think it's uh, yeah, I guess the things that bubble up, and it's not a sentence, but it's know your customer,
Mhm.
deep empathy and emotional intelligence, value creation and follow through.
I
Right?
love it.
That most people get really excited about just acquisition. We got this
Mhm.
person. You don't just want to have a partner. You don't just want to get a partner. You want to have a partner.
Mhm.
You don't just want to get a job. You want to keep the job. You want to be successful in the job.
Mhm.
Right? And it's very similar with partnerships. It's very easy to get excited about the shiny object, and it can be a lot of work to get that partner. A lot of work to get that partner, and you absolutely should celebrate it. But that's also the starting line, right?
That's good, and there's a brand that we work with that took on a good amount of Series A funding, and I was talking with them about that, and they brought up a good point that we found investors that had capital. Of course, that's what everybody talks about, but like we were strategic in looking for at one point we needed a new factory. So we found an investor that had experience developing or launching factories. And we brought that in. It sounds like with, if I'm hearing you correctly, with the partnerships, it's the same. Whereas in like, yes, they're going to bring us sales, but like what other things are going to be involved with this partnership? Like what other things are going to be valued or exchanged over the time?
Exactly right. You need to know how you're ultimately contributing to this partner's life, their brand, their career, their impact in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need to know how you're doing that. And then you got to map a strategy to go execute that, right?
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit, when we talk about our mission of democratizing high performance, that's what CrossFit does, right? And so, yeah, we're going to be at the CrossFit Games and it's figuring out what's the content strategy, who are the athletes we want to bring. There's all sorts of, it gets very like, I think people get really excited about that stuff. But like, to me, it's very simple of like, take a step back, first principles. Do I understand our customer? Do I understand their customer? Are we able to create value for them? Do I have empathy for the position that they're in? Do I have empathy for my team and how we're driving it? And then ultimately, like, we got to go follow through and bring it to home.
I love it. And for anyone listening that's at the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in the marketing industry, what marketing role or roles do you think will have the highest demand opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years?
The one you can get, I don't know. This is like, listen, I used to be in finance, and my entry into partnerships was I applied to the lowest level position at the company. And they said, have you thought about sales? And I said, I do now. And then, demonstrated a year sales, then moved over to partnerships. And that was my in.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I would say is like, what's the role? I don't like, there's so much in-house versus agency now. Like I hardly can keep track of the speed at which marketing is moving. And so I guess the right role for me, and this, I don't want to like skirt your question, is less about title and more about, are you aligned to the mission?
Mm-hmm.
Can you follow great leadership and be around them?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. If that's the case, be a blank canvas, allow others to paint on you. Don't have an opinion, go strong, learn some great skills, become an expert.
Love it. And last question for you. Where can listeners connect with you, learn more about yourself or your brand?
Yeah. So for us, livemomentous.com, on Instagram, live momentous, on Twitter or X at live momentous. Myself, hit me up on LinkedIn. I think it's like health JSC is my slash. But Jordan Cohen, VP here at Momentous, would love to connect with you all.
Awesome.
Just don't spam me on LinkedIn. No one needs that.
Yeah.
No one wants that.
I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. This was a great episode.
Call me. Very, very grateful for you. Thanks so much.